You can grab Phil, and I can grab somebody, and we go up to Hunter Mountain. They're open until April 15th.
Where's that? Vermont?
No, it's New York, man.
New York.
That's right up the road.
It's just right. It's casual 4 hours. All right, fine. We can probably do that.
All right, sounds good.
Well, so the thing we actually came here to talk about today.
yeah, man.
Uh-huh.
The scriptures, maybe. The sermon from yesterday, maybe.
Sermon, snowboarding, sermon and snowboarding. It's the 2 S's of our Monday morning.
Yeah.
Which is great for somebody with a slight lisp. You never noticed that before.
I never noticed that.
I went to speech therapy when I was in school.
Okay, something new.
It's better. It was great when I was learning Spanish because they do all the the lispy things.
Oh, that's
so
true.
Just fell right back into it.
Yeah, no.
Natural. Okay. Anyway.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
What's going on?
Happy Monday.
We are here
at the table.
Again, which is great.
We missed last week, and that was sad.
Yeah, we did.
I did miss getting to talk about that.
It was definitely a good week of being in the scripture in Psalm 40. How can you go wrong? You know what I mean? When God pulls us out of a pit and we have a new song to sing.
Yeah.
But
so fun.
You know, we had it was a holiday. I guess it was last week on
we
Monday.
had a holiday on Monday.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you guys went up to Vermont, which was cool. Visit Garrett, and we weren't here, so but that psalm itself was really fun to sit in for the week. We actually talked about it then Thursday night at the porch, and just how do we wait well, and what do we do when we're in this time where we know that joy exists, but it's not really in us, and
that's so hard because the waiting is part of what God is doing.
Yeah.
And we're on his time, not on ours, though we feel better about our timing, but it normally isn't God's timing.
We don't usually get to go in
So
our
he causes us to wait, and in the waiting, he grows us. He grows us in miraculous ways, and as we wait for God to do his thing, because that if we remember from a couple weeks ago, the word patiently, there was 2 different Hebrew words for patiently, and that word that they chose, that David chose in that Psalm 40 was the word wait expectantly, knowing that it's coming.
It was that's the a whole super waiting, right? It was have wait in your waiting or something, wasn't it?
It's two both words right in back of each other, and so that's how the Hebrew does, and it's a great thing to understand that when we live in expectation, it changes how we think. It changes our perspective. It's okay, I have to wait, but I know I'm expecting God to do something because he promised he would, and so he will.
Right. Yeah, and he always does. And I think that what was cool then, as we were looking at Psalm 77 yesterday, is Asaph is kind of in that season of not really thriving right now, but it's a really awesome example of
that's so true.
Waiting well, and he's waiting to be pulled from exhaustion, which was the word that we talked about yesterday. But there's those exhaustion and despair really are not that far apart from each other, not. Right?
I mean, honestly, exhaustion, and I thought about that because I knew that both the despair and the exhaustion were very much related, because when we get so exhausted that we just have nothing left, it often feels much like despair.
Yeah.
Whereas the despair was that David was highlighting was actually, I have zero way out. I don't have a clue what to do, whereas the exhaustion can get us there really fast. But that whole sense of I'm spent, I got nothing left, often causes us to get into that place of despair, at least depression. You know what I mean?
When you said that yesterday, as you were talking, you were like, not a doctor, neither am I, so don't take this as medical advice. But often doctors will just start with, are you getting sleep at night? Are you actually physically resting? Because when we are exhausted, our minds don't work as well, and we can't process things as well.
And it's that simple. Sometimes it's that simple. It's like you're not getting sleep. Let's start there. And that is one of the things that he said. He said in verse 4, you don't let me sleep. And that was the whole way that Hebrew is written, where he's guarding the eyelids.
I really thought about drawing a little picture that Sean could put up on the screen for everybody, in the post edits, but then I didn't draw the picture. But
like
I thought that
of,
image of like a little guy with a sword and a shield, like guarding the. Yeah, I don't know.
But it does feel that way, you know. And when we're exhausted and we can't sleep, it just compiles it worse and worse.
Yeah.
And so that's why we made a differentiation between an exhaustion that we normally go through, that we like going through. You mentioned the slopes.
Yep.
A hard day at the slopes. You're done. You're exhausted. You just want some dinner, and
sleep
it's
right
like,
away.
Wow, feels great.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that augmented exhaustion that we talked about yesterday that gets to that deeper place in our soul. That's just like, man, I got nothing left.
And
that's
something is obviously off, right?
Something's off.
Something's obviously
off.
Hey, speaking of music, and we know the Psalms are really written with music in mind, especially this one that was specifically written for a choir director, right?
That's right, yeah.
So I took piano lessons when I was a kid, played in the middle school band, was a bari saxophone.
Man.
Could not play it at this point, but I can still read music a little bit, and there's a note in music that's not a note, it's a sign. It is a rest symbol.
I know exactly which one you're talking
about. It tells
about.
us to rest, and that is the way that I have always thought about the word Selah. Mm-hmm. When we're reading a psalm, it's like, okay, rest in the music, right? It's an intentional pause. And so I loved getting to think about that word a little bit extra yesterday.
I like how you defined that, by the way, because actually the Hebrew word Selah is actually, in the most technical sense, a musical pause.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, but when you look at it a little deeper and you look at it at the root, it's a musical pause. Mm-hmm. It's a pause in what's being said. It's the pause in the thought pattern for the purpose of God revealing to us something that we need revelation to change our perspective.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so it positions us, like I said yesterday, to hear his voice and be in his presence. Mm-hmm. That's what that rest does. And so when you say rest, it is that, all right, stop. You just heard all these lyrics.
Yeah.
You just heard the poetry. Stop the music.
Yeah. When that happens when we're listening to a song today, you know, there's the people who write music put those there specifically because they want us to sit in what just happened or get us ready for what's about to happen. It's the end of a phrase and then a beginning of a new phrase. And so musically, it's really, if our music didn't have those rest points in it,
it would just be nonstop, and you know so much. And isn't that the way we do sometimes when we're looking at scripture and we have these issues that we're trying to wrestle with God, and you know, we read and we're like, all right, let's go to the next thing, and we read, let's go to the next thing, and then we're done and we're off and we're headed to work or something like that. Instead of let me look at this. I have got to take some time to pause because this is where I feel like God is going to bring something to me, and I just got to get myself in the right position. There's no way to do it without just pausing, resting, clearing our minds, saying, God, what do you have to say?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's just so hard.
Yeah. And as we sort of mentioned a few moments ago, the way that Asaph is writing this, where he's writing it from, is this place of exhaustion and not the good kind, and frustration, and what on earth comes next? How am I going to move on from this feeling that I have? And the way that he starts, just laying all of that out for the Lord.
He does.
And then pausing and then resting so that it can sort of all just like settle out, right? And then we move on. I just love the way that it was structured, and I thought it was cool the way that you talked about, okay, you laid all of this out and then a pause, and then you look at all these things and then a pause. And it kind of got me thinking about the way that we can read it also the other way, where there's this pause that prepares for what comes next.
That's great. Right? Which is exactly the part of the purpose of that. Yeah. It's not just reflect on what you said. It's reflect on what you said so that you can understand what you just said and what you just thought about and what God is saying, so that it can prepare you for the next place. Yeah. That's such a great way. That's so good. That's really good.
I was just thinking, like, you know, he got all of his feelings out, and then there's this moment, And the next thing that happens is we see those questions that he asked by way of kind of just reflection and reminder of the truth of who the Lord is. And to have a moment of clear-mindedness before you go into that is really an important thing.
I agree. And what you're saying makes so much sense, because he laid out, God, I'm crying out to you. You're not listening. I'm in trouble. I'm searching for you all night long. You are not there. What is going on? Then it says, pause. Mm-hmm. Think about that. Yeah. And I think that prepared him to get to the point where he asked those 6 questions. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, I'm just going to lay out that, God, you're just not there. Yep. I'm going to think about that a minute. Okay, now I've got some questions, and it's kind of starting to open up for him. Let me ask these questions. And as a matter of fact, as soon as he's done asking all those questions, what is it? It's another pause and rest, and and after he's asked those questions, I got to think about the answer to these questions. And then he goes into a change of just a whole change. Yeah. And once he has thought through those answers to those questions, the shift is, the Lord is for me. Right? I mean, for me, and understands me, and knows my weaknesses, and knows my struggles. Then he goes and prays that to the Lord. And then what? Another rest where he's like, I just praised the Lord for who he is in my situation. And now let me go and think about that a minute. Yeah. Yeah. It's pause. And I think, how important is it for us to do that? You did mention Sabbath rest yesterday. Sabbath comes from the word Shabbat, right? Which is Hebrew, and it's okay. We need to rest, and it's a holy kind of rest. It's not just like I need to go lay down for a minute. It's intentional breaking from my life so that I can refocus myself on what is holy, on the Lord, and that happens sort of on these little individual, like smaller scales all through this psalm. It really does. If we structure our lives like that, what difference could that make for us? I agree. And when he gets to that last pause for the purpose of reflection, so God can reveal to us something, so we're hearing his voice, he gets into the specifics of what happened. Yeah. It kind of gets intense at that point. He's like, oh man, God, this is what you did. And since you did that then, you can do it now. Yeah. The description of it is crazy. I'm like looking at it, and the description of it does not make me think of rest. That's for sure. Yeah, it's like, man. Oh my gosh, the water is all over the place. There's rain, there's lightning. It's crazy. It's all right here. But he approached that like craziness and approached it well, because he was coming from this place of rest. That's right. Right? And you can like think through all of this madness, and we can end up ourselves in all of this madness all the time. So true. But when we interrupt it, I think of it was maybe the very first message that you preached in this series, where we talked about needing to have an interrupting question. To interrupt the cycle, right? Yep. This interlude, this Selah moment is an interruption of sorts. It is that. We break this cycle, and then we can go into remembering all of this crazy. Yeah. But Lord, you're over it all. And so it feels suddenly a lot less crazy. I love the way you say interruption. And I like to use this word sometimes when I'm talking about God. That's a negative word that I turn positive. Okay. Let's do it. Intrusion. Okay. So when we see this, he's like, the Red Sea saw you, and all this power upon power of the weather and the nature. He intrudes in that. And in verse 19 says, your road led through the sea, your pathway through the mighty waters, a pathway no one knew was there. And he intrudes in our lives in the greatest way possible. And we may feel like it's like, what are you doing, God? Right. Because it feels like an intrusion. Yeah. But God's like, I know what I'm doing. Yeah. I just need you to pause. I need you to reflect. I need you to rest. And let me handle this. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's so great that God is that in love with us and in tune with everything that we need. Yeah. And this
example that we have from Asaph to take our exhaustion, our fatigue. It's like a fatigue from life, right?
That's right.
So he's feeling this exhaustion with that one note that's not quite right, as Leo showed us yesterday. And he's like, okay, God, you have to do something, because I can't. Like, I cannot re-energize myself here. I need something to intrude in this situation to shift the exhaustion I'm feeling into something that
we often need him to do that. And I don't say often, I mean all the time. I mean, he promises us, even through Christ, that when we are feeling weak, the power of Christ comes in us, and then the strength is his, not ours, but it's working through us. And so, man, I think one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of people are feeling the exhaustion of that deeper nature. It's like, man, and it might not even be because of work. It just might be, like you said, life. It might be, but we feel that, we don't know what to do with it, but we're spent, and it goes deep, and it's often there in the deeper places where God does his greatest work. And so then he pulls us out, and we understand a little more who he is, because we took that time to reflect. Isn't it interesting? You brought this out 3 different times. He says to pause and reflect in this one short song. And I think that we need more of those Selah moments in our lives, so we can reflect and see what's going on. And I think we'd be in so much a better place.
Very much so. I think that's about the time we have. Do want to note that, just because I think it's always important to say, this shows us Jesus, right? Think about the way the world's groaning after 400 years of complete silence, and God intrudes on that.
That's so true.
And that's it's got to be the delivery that we're talking about here, right? Like, it's kind of a prophetic.
Absolutely.
That's the deliverance for the people, for his people, that is talking about the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. Like, that's who we are. So we have that deliverance, and it came through Jesus.
It's such a good point. I mean, you know, in the Old Testament, the deliverance came through the Red Sea. In the New Testament, came through the cross. And it's everything pointing back to Jesus. And that's the cool thing about this scripture, that everything can point to Jesus. It's amazing, you know? So good awesome. Good to end on that. Yeah, man.
It's a good place to be. Start and end with Jesus, right?
Can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong.
All right, have a good week, y'all.
See you guys.
We'll see you soon.